Trump just dropped a tariff bomb on Apple, and Canada could be about to cash in big time. Just like we saw with Amazon, Apple is now scrambling to reroute billions in trade away from the US. Our ports, warehouses, and job market are lining up for another massive payoff. But here's the twist. Canada's infrastructure might not be ready for Apple's scale. Will Ottawa step up like it might with Amazon? Or will this opportunity slip through our fingers? Stick around and let's see how this could play out. Apple's reliance on overseas assembly, especially in China, leaves the company exposed to significant new costs if a 25% US tariff on imported iPhones takes effect. With most iPhones still assembled abroad, Apple faces a tough decision: absorb higher expenses, raise prices for consumers, or find creative ways to bypass the tariffs altogether. According to Reuters, Apple is already accelerating plans to shift much of its US iPhone production to India by 2026. But this transition will take years and can't address the immediate pressure from looming tariffs. In the meantime, Canada emerges as a potential workaround. Unlike Amazon's general merchandise, Apple's supply chain depends on moving fragile components, like circuit boards and glass screens that require climate-controlled shipping and precise timing. Any slowdowns at customs or bottlenecks in Canadian ports could disrupt Apple's tightly coordinated manufacturing cycles, threatening product launches and inventory levels. USMCA rules offer some relief, allowing partial duty exemptions for North American goods, but Apple's current supply chain only qualifies for limited benefits. To unlock full tariff-free status, Apple would need to increase the North American content of its devices, which is a long-term undertaking. Industry analysts point out that routing products through Canada could shave double-digit percentages off Apple's import duties under USMCA rules. Canada's rail network provides an alternative route for getting iPhones into the US market, but the scale is daunting. If Apple were to reroute even a portion of its shipments, the demands on port capacity, customs processing, and rail logistics would spike. The country's semiconductor plants, like the facility in Bromont, Quebec, offer a possible path toward increasing North American content in Apple devices. However, scaling up production to meet Apple's volume would require major investment and coordination. As D.A. Davidson warns, Canada has only a narrow window to meet Apple's timeline. If ports, railways, and manufacturers can't synchronize their upgrades soon, Apple may commit to alternatives in India or Vietnam instead. The scale of Apple's potential shift could eclipse even Amazon's recent supply chain moves. But the opportunity depends entirely on whether Canada's logistics sector can keep pace. Canada's logistics infrastructure faces a real test if Apple considers moving even a portion of its iPhone shipments north. Major ports like Vancouver's Delta Port and key airports such as Toronto Pearson already operate close to full capacity during peak seasons. This raises immediate questions about whether the system can handle the high volume and strict timing Apple's supply chain demands, especially when every delay risks disrupting global launch schedules. The experience with Amazon is telling. When Amazon shifted more shipments through Vancouver to avoid US tariffs, customs delays became a major obstacle. Containers sometimes waited over a week for clearance, incurring significant costs and highlighting the vulnerability of Canadian logistics when volumes spike. For Apple, which relies on precise delivery windows and moves high-value, time-sensitive products, even minor disruptions could have outsized financial impacts. Toronto Pearson Airport, a central hub for tech imports, already processes a significant share of Canada's high-tech air cargo. While expansion plans are underway, the current facilities are stretched, particularly during holiday quarters when demand surges. Quebec's chip plant already supports Apple prototypes, hinting at a path to boost North American content under USMCA. If Apple expands this relationship, it could help the company qualify for greater tariff relief, but scaling up semiconductor output is a long-term project. Rail operators point out that their current fleets and schedules are nearly maxed out. Adding Apple's volume would require months of investment and upgrades, especially for temperature-controlled cars needed for sensitive components. Experts flagged customs digitalization delays that could bottleneck high-security filings. Canada's customs systems, while functional, lag behind in automation and digital processing. High-security shipments like iPhones require more regulatory checks, and the current pace of modernization is unlikely to keep up with a sudden surge in volume. With these challenges in mind, the question is not just whether Canada can attract Apple's business, but whether it can deliver the reliability and speed Apple's supply chain requires. Amazon's playbook for navigating US tariffs offers a clear model for Apple to consider. When tariffs hit, Amazon shifted significant volumes through Canadian ports, set up new fulfillment centers across the country, and tapped into USMCA trade rules to keep goods flowing into the US with reduced duties. This approach allowed Amazon to cut its tariff burden drastically and reinforce Canada's role as a logistics gateway. The core lesson: rerouting through Canada and leveraging USMCA rules can yield major cost savings, but the strategy depends on reliable infrastructure and seamless customs processing. Apple faces a similar challenge, but the stakes are much higher. Apple's products also demand specialized handling. Temperature controls, secure storage, and rapid customs clearance are non-negotiable. Even a brief delay could disrupt global product launches and cost the company billions in lost sales. Unlike Amazon, which can absorb shipping delays with inventory buffers, Apple runs on tight launch windows and just-in-time deliveries. The employment impact is another area where Apple could follow Amazon's lead, but on a larger scale. Analysts expect that if Apple shifts even a portion of its supply chain north, the demand for high-skill logistics and tech workers would surge, especially in cities like Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. Rail operators already run close to maximum load, and only a fraction of the fleet is equipped for temperature-sensitive cargo. Amazon used it to verify North American content at Canadian facilities and lower their effective tariffs. Apple could do the same, but the process is complex and time-consuming. The company's supply chain is built around strict product standards and tightly controlled supplier contracts, which makes rapid adaptation difficult. Shifting even part of iPhone production to Canada would require executive-level commitment and a willingness to overhaul established processes. All of these factors hinge on one critical point: Canada's infrastructure and customs systems must be ready to handle the scale and speed Apple requires. Ottawa's approach to customs modernization stands at the center of whether Canada can seize the moment. Canada's customs system, still reliant on legacy processes, lags behind key global peers in both speed and automation. For high-value tech shipments like iPhones, this gap poses a direct risk. Without up-to-date digital systems, processing times for sensitive electronics can stretch far beyond what Apple's supply chain can tolerate during major product launches. Major digital customs upgrades have been postponed, missing critical launch seasons that matter most for companies shifting supply chains in response to US tariffs. The Canada Border Services Agency's Single Window Initiative, which aims to streamline import declarations, won't be fully operational until late 2025 at the earliest. That timeline leaves a substantial policy gap, especially as companies finalize logistics strategies a year or more in advance. For Apple, whose peak shipping periods cluster around fall product launches, this delay means the customs system could become a choke point rather than a gateway. High security component rules could triple clearance times without automation improvements. Customs brokers report that each shipment demands multiple layers of paperwork, with manual checks slowing the process. There is currently no digital solution to handle these specialized filings efficiently, making it difficult for Apple to ensure timely delivery of sensitive products. The 2023 Supply Chain Task Force flagged these issues, but recommendations for AI-driven customs technology have been pushed back. Last winter's Amazon backlog highlights how even minor holdups at ports can cascade into broader supply chain disruptions for precision electronics. For Apple, whose products require exact timing and secure handling, any delay could translate into missed sales and higher costs. Only a handful of Canadian ports currently have the shielded inspection facilities needed for Apple's encrypted components. Rail networks face similar obstacles, while operators have boosted tech cargo capacity. They still lack the flexibility and specialized training needed. Trial runs moving smaller Apple shipments have already exposed weaknesses at key hubs. Ultimately, these policy gaps and infrastructure delays create uncertainty for companies considering a Canadian supply chain pivot. For Apple, the decision hinges not just on tariffs and logistics, but on whether Ottawa can deliver a seamless, secure import process in time for critical product cycles. The next phase of opportunity may depend on more than just moving goods. It could involve building new manufacturing capabilities on Canadian soil. Apple's history shows a willingness to relocate production in response to trade policy shifts, as seen with its Mac Pro assembly in Texas. Canada's established manufacturing base, especially Ontario's automotive supply chain, offers a practical starting point. USMCA rules create a direct path for tariff-free access if Apple can raise the North American content in its devices. Right now, about 35% of an iPhone's value comes from North American parts like Corning glass and US-made chips. Apple already sources chips from Quebec, which count toward this requirement. R&D incentives in Quebec and Ontario could help offset the costs of expanding Apple's footprint. Transitioning to full-scale iPhone assembly in Canada isn't simple. Specialized clean rooms and chip assembly lines would take over a year to validate. The timeline is tight. Apple typically locks in production sites well in advance of product launches. While Canada weighs its next steps, other countries are already moving. Mexico has become a central hub for iPhone assembly. Vietnam is also moving quickly. The country's electronics sector has seen rapid growth, with Apple increasing its AirPods production there. India presents another challenge for Canada's ambitions. Apple's manufacturing footprint in India is growing fast. Mexico can expand its operations quickly, with existing infrastructure able to absorb new demand faster than Canada. Canada's window to attract Apple's investment is narrowing. Competing locations are building, hiring, and signing deals now. Canada's next move will determine whether it becomes a tech logistics leader or cedes ground to faster-moving rivals. Do you think Ottawa can move fast enough this time? Let us know in the comments and subscribe for ongoing coverage.